This is Brendan with CyberMirage. This looks like super interesting. I want to see this one. Also, there's a link on the table out there if you want to join our Discord for Hack Miami. The Hack Miami Discord's on the table out there, as well as for future meetings for our actual local meetup, Hack Miami meetups. The website is meetup.com/Hack Miami if you want to join if you're local here in South Florida.
Already?
Yep.
Good?
Yes or no?
Yeah, I guess I could use it. I mean, I have a really big mouth, but
It's up to you.
use a mouth. Testing. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Hello, everyone. My name is Brandon Kovacs. I'm here to talk to you today about how social engineering is shaping the future, or how artificial intelligence is shaping the future of social engineering. Sorry, I got 2 hours of sleep last night. I've been flying all night from San Francisco just to speak here today. Then I'm about to jump back on our plane and fly back. Alrighty, so let's begin. Very quick about me, just so we can talk about the session and all that good stuff. I come to you today with over 2 decades in cybersecurity, starting when I was 14 years old as an unpaid intern here in South Florida at a company called Guarded Networks, where I did real-time network defense and attack mitigation on behalf of like really large financial institutions and Fortune 500 type clients. That's baby Brandon, 21 years ago. And today I work as a senior red team consultant at Bishop Fox, where, as I like to say, we get to do all the fun stuff. It's kind of why I was in San Francisco. I was doing a physical red team for the past 2 weeks, and I have to go back to finish the job next week. So yeah, that's all about me. So why are we here today? As I said, I work on a red team, so it's my job to emulate specific types of threats and attack paths and attack scenarios. And on the other hand, I've always believed that the best defense requires the best offense, and you can't really do that without having a clear understanding of the threat that you're trying to protect against, right? Especially from like a blue teaming perspective. So that's kind of the intention of this session today. So before we dive right into how to create deepfakes and voice clones and all the good stuff, I'm going to give you a very quick, high-level introduction to AI concepts and terminology, just so we know what we're talking about. And then we're going to go step by step, and I'm going to go in depth to talk to you about how voice clones are created and trained, in addition to deepfakes. And then in the end, we're going to finish off with a live demonstration where I'm going to show how you can infer your voice clone and deepfake video models live and in real time, and locally too. I'm doing it off of a laptop. And what that opens the door for down the road, especially for like internal phishing or social engineering assessments, et cetera. We're like running it from like red teams using these operationally. So yeah, why are we here today? AI is shaping the future of social engineering. That's why it's called my talk. As we're beginning to see is that we're seeing threat actors starting to utilize a variety of machine learning models to carry out all sorts of, to essentially empower their TTPs, right? Enabling to do things such as the creation of realistic deepfake video and voice models, both trained off open source data. So for example, think of YouTube videos, podcasts, earnings calls, if it's like a public figure of a Fortune 500 company. But also, even though we don't have that much time today, and it's out of the scope of this talk, it's enabling threat actors to do things such as spear phishing at scale, where they're using a combination of like really large data sets and data breaches and LLMs, and using techniques such as like what's called retrieval augmented generation to essentially write phishing emails at scale on a per person basis. It's pretty crazy stuff. And then also one thing to mention, something we saw here in the United States a few months ago is vishing at scale, in which someone cloned, I believe it was Joe Biden's voice, and then hooked that up to a robo-dialer and started calling thousands of people, in order to spread misinformation. So it's allowing us to do a lot of really crazy stuff at scale, and that's kind of why we're here today to talk about it. So yeah, AI-powered attacks are evolving, enabling threat actors to conduct fraud and to thefts ranging from tens of millions of dollars to the spreading of television networks, spread misinformation. And what we saw earlier this year, which really caught my attention, was real-time deepfakes. So let's start with it. So in 2019, we had someone clone the chief executive officer of an energy firm in the UK, resulting in $250,000 lost. That was 5 years ago. Fast forward to 2020, same incident happened where it was voice cloning, but it was affecting the company director of a multinational bank in the United Arab Emirates, resulting in a $35 million loss. Fast forward to 2023, we saw the spread of deepfake videos, but specifically using them in a way to be weaponized and spread misinformation. What happened was that Iranian hackers broke into streaming providers and streaming networks and created deepfake videos of a news anchor and used that to distribute misinformation in the area that they were trying to target. And then, like I said, 2024, earlier this year, and I believe it was January, a guy that worked at a multinational firm in Hong Kong was invited to a Zoom session saying, hey, can you get on this call right now? So on this live video call, where he thought he was talking to the chief financial officer of his company, and other employees too. There are a bunch of people on the call. And they're all talking, going back and forth, but in the end, they instructed this one person to send a wire transfer for $25 million, which he did, because the chief financial officer told him to, so why would he not? Turns out it was a real-time deep fake, and yeah, it's pretty cool stuff. It's kind of what caught my attention, because if you think about it in the context of social engineering phishing, if you can pop a shell and tap the wire, I mean, obviously if you do this with a permission of the client, during a red team, it opens up so many doors. Imagine internal phishing over Microsoft Teams or Zoom or Skype. It really makes you think now, what are the possibilities on how this can be leveraged by not only threat actors, but from red teamers, how we can now take this and emulate these same TTPs when performing engagements. So that's kind of what the context of this whole talk will be today, how you can emulate these specific attack paths and attack scenarios. So before we dive into it, I know some people AI is the biggest buzzword right now. Some people may have heard what a model is. Some people may not be as familiar. So I'm just going to level the playing field and just describe it at a very high level. I can go in technical depth, but just want to make it as accessible as possible for people. So what is a model? At its core, it's essentially it's an algorithm, right? Trained to execute a particular task. And that model, through a process known as training, looks at a data set, which is expressed as a set of inputs and outputs. For example, let's say we're training a model to detect pictures of cats. We're going to label that data set and say, this is a Bengal cat, this is a tabby cat, this is a dog, not a cat, right? So through a process called training, we're looking at this data and we're trying to learn from it, right, and make sense of it. And essentially make sense of it in a mathematical context, solving for unknown coefficients. And over time, through a series of iterations, that formula it's trying to essentially create from a numerical standpoint gets better and better and more accurate. And then finally, when we have that trained model, and this is probably the process most people are familiar with, we do what's called inferencing, which is where we take that trained model and we provide it new unseen data, things that it hasn't been trained upon, right? And based on what it's learned from the past, it's able to then essentially create a prediction of what it thinks it should do. So for example, I'll get to that in a sec. So training models, there's a very high level overview of what that workflow looks like. And this can be applied to any sort of model, right? I'm gonna get into the actual specifics of what it looks like for the deepfake video and a voice clones. But from a high level standpoint, the steps are very straightforward. You're gonna first work on collecting the data. And from there, that can be text, photos, videos, audios, documents. The data you're going to collect is really going to be applicable to the type of model you're trying to create. So if you're doing a vision model, you're going to be doing videos. If you're trying to create the next ChatGPT in an LLM, you're probably going to be training on a corpus of text. So if you're doing a voice clone, you're going to be training on audio files. So the context of what you're doing really depends on, or the steps involved really, I guess, relate to the type of model you're trying to train. Sorry, I haven't really slept all night. I'm trying to do my best I can. But yeah, from a high level overview, these are the steps. You're going to collect the data, and then you're going to prepare the data. And they have very specific sub-steps, but from a high level overview, you're going to clean that data, that raw data, and you're going to prepare it in such a way. You're going to format that data, and that can differ depending on what type of model you're trying to create. We'll get into that in specifics. And then finally, we're going to label that data. And again, that step looks very different on each type of model you're trying to train, but at a high level, this is kind of what you do. Then from there, we do the training, where we're trying to learn from that data set and do like pattern recognition, essentially. And then the end is that trained model that it spits out. And then, like I said, this is the part where most people are familiar with, where you're inferencing the models. And this is where you provide a set of inputs, right? Whether it's a text, photos, videos, audios, documents, depending on what type of model you're inferring, right? Maybe it's a generative model like an LLM or like ChatGPT, or maybe you're doing natural language processing. You're trying to like evaluate a string and see if it's positive or negative. Or maybe it's a classification model. You're providing a string of like an email, and you're trying to detect if it's spam or not. You're trying to calculate a score, 0 through 1. Or a recognition model. Maybe you provide a photo and say, hot dog or not a hot dog, right? And then finally it gives you a result or some sort of output. So high-level overview, we train the models, and then once you have that trained model, we infer the models. So before I continue, especially when we get into the context of voice cloning and deepfakes, I got to really highlight the ethical considerations of what we're doing. So let me just make it very clear. The model that you're about to see, or the models, I'm about to show you one that no one's ever seen before, or at least in the United States. The models that I'm about to show you were created with the explicit permission of the people who I cloned. One was my friend Chris, and the other is this person named Alith, who I work with. So yeah, do not clone someone without the permission. Just want to make that very clear. And the models that I'm about to show you were created with permission, and they adhere strictly to these guidelines. Because as you can imagine, there's some very serious ethical concerns, especially in the context of how these models can be used. You're essentially, you're copying someone's likeness, right? So let's get into voice cloning. So to do voice cloning, we're going to use something called retrieval voice conversion. It's open source. You can find it at the following GitHub repository. It allows you to train voice models where we're using preferably wave audio files as the training data. You can use any audio, but if you want the best results, and I'll get into best practices as I go on through subsequent slides, you're going to provide it wave audio files as that training data, just because it's lossless. And then lastly, it allows you to infer. So you can take that trained model and do something called audio to audio. So you can take like a speech and then infer that, or using something that I'm going to demonstrate later called the voice changer, we can do that actually in real time. So like I said, the steps look very familiar from a high-level overview, but the actual sub-steps are unique and applicable to voice models. So first, in this case, we're going to collect the data. So in this case, it's going to be audio files, because we're doing a voice model. And then we're going to prepare the data. We're going to clean it, we're going to splice it, we're going to convert it, we're going to transcribe it, which is also labeling. And again, I'll get into more detail in a second. And then finally, we're going to perform training of the model in something called a feature index. And then the output will be that voice model. So let's talk about how we created the voice model, which I'm about to show you. So here's my buddy Chris, who's going to come out on stage in a little bit later. For him specifically, we use something called the voice recorder that we built in-house at Bishop Fox. Well, it's actually open source, but we made some adjustments to it to provide additional language support, specifically like 58 languages. So if you want to do voice clones in Swahili, you can. So the idea here is that you read from a script, right? So there's a script, you select your language, and there's 300 liners that you have to read from. So once you have those 300 liners created, and we're recording them all from 5 to 10 seconds in length to get the best results. We're going to record them in WAV format just because WAV is lossless audio. And specifically, you're actually going to want them in mono at exactly 22,050 hertz, which, if you think about it, is technically 44.1 kilohertz, but it's just half that because it's mono. But eventually, when we have 2 channels, it'll then be 44K. But yeah, the best practices, 300 vocal samples, 5 to 10 seconds in length, and in mono, 22.5 kilohertz. Next, we're going to prepare that data, which will involve cleaning, splicing, conversion. We're going to clean it. So cleaning means we're going to take that data and remove like the ahums, the pops, just the parts of the speech that you don't want to train the model against. What I've learned about this is that the final product all comes down to the quality of the input. So like if you provide it shitty data, you're going to have a really shitty voice model. So you want to take your time, and this is a very tedious process. But again, if you want the best results, you're going to have to invest time in the preparation and labeling of the data. And I'm going to make that pretty clear and noted as I go along. You're going to see what I mean. So yeah, we're going to clean the data. We're going to remove all the gaps, delays, the little pops of the microphone, things like that. And then we're going to splice it. We're going to remove them all. And finally, we're going to convert all those audio tracks. Like I said, the best results are experienced when you get when they're mono tracks, 22.5 kilohertz. And to do this, you can either use Adobe Audition, which allows you to essentially process all 300 tracks in a single pass, or you can do the free version in Audacity, but that personally took me a week to do. Using Adobe Audition, I can do the same process, which would take me it literally took over 20 hours of just cutting 300 files. You can do the whole thing, it takes 5 minutes. So you get a huge time investment savings. Next, we're gonna label the data. So in AI, there's a big concept called labeling. Here we're doing, when it comes to voice, we're doing transcription. So we're gonna take what was said, right? File1.wave, hello, my name is Brandon Kovacs, and we're gonna basically create like a CSV metadata mapping to say this file, this is the actual spoken speech, right? And we're gonna repeat that 300 times. But remember, so if you're using like a voice recorder, you already know what you're saying, so it's all automated. Next, once we have that data, we're gonna throw it into the trainer. And I know there's a lot going on. I'm actually gonna fire up the RVC web UI locally and during the demo time and show you guys in depth. But from a high level overview, it's really straightforward. We're gonna set our parameters. So we're gonna set 40K sample rate for the target, version 2 model. We're gonna set our data set folder, which is just a map folder in Docker. It's pretty straightforward. So you just drop all your MP3s in that single folder. And then, basically it involves a few steps. We're gonna tell the trainer to train to 1,000 rounds of training, but every 50 rounds, we're gonna create what's called a checkpoint, right? And then we're gonna tell it, when it creates those checkpoints, to create a small model file or weight at each step. So that way, as we go along, it's basically creating trained models every 50 steps. And you have to find, like, when it comes to voice cloning, you have to find that sweet spot between how much you train the model, but you don't want to overtrain the model. Because if you train it too much, the voice will sound very robotic, right? So that's what I personally prefer doing, is I train it all the way to the end, so 1,000. And then when the training completes, I'll listen to 1,000. If it's too robotic, then I'll go listen to the 950 version, 900, and so forth, until I find that sweet spot. So it's really straightforward. Once you set the parameters, you're gonna push 4 buttons. Process data, which it takes the data and splits it into smaller chunks. Feature extraction, which it looks at that data and extracts what are called the features. So in the context of audio, it's converting them into essentially numerical vectors, like math vectors. Then also from there, we're then gonna push the button that says train model. Once the training has completed, we're gonna train the feature index. The feature index is essentially a vector index between the features, and it's used during the inferencing to just look it up quicker in real time. So pretty straightforward. 4 buttons: process data, feature extraction, train model, train and feature index. It'll tell you when it's done, and then once you are complete, you're gonna have 2 files, a path file and an index file. And like I said, once you have that trained model, you can then provide new unseen data that it's never seen before and infer it to, whether it's audio to audio or voice changer. And this allows you to essentially preserve the speech of what has been said, but manipulate the pitch and the audio in such a way that it shares the characteristics of whose voice you're cloning. And the output, if you're doing audio to audio, you'll have just a WAV file as the output. Or if you're using the voice changer, you're basically providing an audio buffer, and the output is just that audio buffer in real time, which you'll hear in a moment. So deepfakes. So there's a metric. They say 95% of deepfakes on the internet are created using Deepfake Lab. It's nothing new. It's been out for many, many years. But essentially, at its core, it allows you to train video models using it uses photos as a training data. And I know I'm going to mention capturing video in a moment. We'll get to that. I'll explain what that means in a moment, but it's using photos as the training data. You're going to shoot video and provide it video, but essentially you're going to extract all the frames from that video to pull all the images, and then it looks at those images. And then finally, it allows you to do the inferencing, in which you can, the inferencing for video is called merging. which you can essentially do the face swapping from video to video, whether it's actual video or video to like a video buffer, which we're about to do in real time. So again, the process for creating a deepfake model looks very similar to any other machine learning model, but again, the sub-steps are different. So here in the case, we're going to collect photos and videos of the source and destination. The source is going to be the person we're cloning. So in this case, it's going to be my friend Chris or my colleague Alith. And the destination is going to be whose face it's going to appear on, right? So the idea here is we're going to collect photos and videos of the source and destination. Then we're going to prepare that data. We're going to look at the data. We're going to extract all the frames from it. We're going to do something called alignment, where we're identifying what's called the facial landmarks, the eyes, the nose, the mouth, etc. We're then going to label that data, and I'll show you what that means when it comes to video stuff, through a process called masking. And then finally, we're going to look at that data set, and we're going to learn from it to do pattern recognition. And then over time, you're going to see how accurate and lifelike it becomes as we go from like 1 iteration to 2.5 million. And the end result is going to be this deepfake model, which we can then infer. So let's talk about data collection. So meet my friend Chris. He is a big Miami Dolphins fan and loves to wear Miami Dolphins hats. So for him, we recorded 30 minutes of footage of him basically doing a variety of facial expressions and angles, right? We're capturing up, down, left, right, all the different angles, but 30 minutes of it, him talking. And we did this in a studio environment where we control the lighting, we control all the parameters. But the idea here is 30 minutes of super high quality footage, 4K resolution. Oh, and we're gonna do this on both him and myself, right, the destination. Next is the extraction. So like I said, DeepFace Lab uses photos as the training data. So if you're using videos to capture, a video really is just a set of photos, right? So here we're gonna take a video of both videos, the source and destination, and we're gonna extract the frames to get the individual images. So if you shoot 30 minutes of footage, you're gonna get like 20, 30, 40,000 image frames, which is sufficient for training these models against. Next, we're gonna do a process called alignment on both the source and destination data sets. So basically, like I said, what we do here, we're identifying the facial landmarks, so the eyes, the nose, the mouth. It's identifying the face, it's identifying the head, right? But if you look here at the face, it doesn't really get the whole face, right? It only gets like up to like here. I know I have a really big forehead, so it misses all this part, right? So the idea here is we're now gonna label this data, and we're gonna refine it. We're gonna properly define the facial contours. And we're gonna do this for a subset of the images. I personally recommend however many photos you're putting in there for training, you do roughly 1%. And you wanna have a really good variety of angles, expressions, because what's gonna happen is that we're gonna learn from this. So that way, when we look at these frames, we can identify what a head looks like, even at different angles, right? When I look here, it knows to only take this part, right? And ignore, because it can't see anything here. So then we are going to take that data set and we're going to train what's called a mask. So my buddy Chris, like I said, he loves to wear Miami Dolphins hats. So I thought for this, why don't I also wear a Miami Dolphins hat when we're capturing all the data? So that way when we're doing the face swap, it'll ignore, we taught the trainer to ignore his hat, right? But only focus on the head. So it'll do my whole head here when I'm not wearing a hat, or when I'm wearing a hat, it'll only do up to my receding forward line, but ignore everything else. So we're going to do this for both the source and destination. And this was trained to, I think, 13.65 million rounds. It took quite a while to train. But over time, it becomes more refined. The edges are nice and refined. They're not crispy and sharp. And that's kind of how you got it right. Once the edges look okay, and also you're following what's called the loss values, which I can get into later. So training, this is where the actual magic happens. So as you see, we have the source, right? The destination, and then what's called the prediction. These are technically not Chris, and this technically isn't me, these are deep fakes. But as you see, as we go from 1,000 to 10,000 to 100,000 to 250,000 iterations, it becomes more realistic and more lifelike. So what I'm about to show you is how this can be expressed in a time-lapse video. So what you're gonna see is the trainer going from 0 to 2.5 rounds. And what you're gonna see, let me just point it out before. So you're going to see the source. These are the real images. This column will be the model's prediction of what it thinks it looks like. So it's basically going to try and rebuild this. So same thing. So we're going to have source to source, destination to destination, and then over here is going to be the prediction, the mapping from him to me using this facial angle. So you're going to see him looking this way, me looking this way. So you're going to see a deep fake of Chris, of me, looking that way. So ready? So as you see, we're training. We just hit 10,000 rounds. It's going to speed up in a moment. Now it really speeds up. So as you see, we're approaching now 1 million rounds of training, it becomes really lifelike, very realistic. You can make out his birthmark, freckle, all that good stuff. And yeah, it looks really good. So how can these be operationalized and used? So like I said, I worked on a red team, and it's our job to essentially emulate these types of threats and attacks that are happening now in real time. So how are they being used? Because this is what we're kind of doing today. So let's say you're on a red team and you're doing an external breach. You could use the voice clone. Again, this obviously has to be done under permission of the client of who you're working with. But if they're cool with it, and you work with that person, with full knowledge, they provide you the voice samples and whatever, you can do the voice clone to call the IT help desk to issue password resets, see if it works. Assume breach. Let's say, sometimes with the password resets, some companies are now having policies out where you have to show ID, so you have to jump on a Zoom call and show your ID. But you could also defeat that by using the DeepFake itself, right, and a fake ID printer. Let's say you're doing an assume breach, again, with the full knowledge of the client. You work with the CEO of their company, and you create a voice clone and video deepfake of their CEO or someone, an executive with authority, and then use that as a starting point to see if you can compromise the network. As them do internal phishing over Microsoft Teams, Skype, Zoom, Cisco WebEx, or whatever you guys do. As him, call the IT help desk. Hey, I need access to this database or this whatever, right? Or let's say we're doing a traditional social engineering assessment where we're creating these deepfake videos to test the resilience of the employees in their organization and their ability to detect these deepfakes and use them as a way to essentially validate the security awareness training that's been going on in the business. Before I get to the demo stuff, I learned in the last conference to show this first because you're not going to see this again. So if you guys want to stay in touch, it goes to my LinkedIn. It doesn't hack you, don't worry. So yeah, there's a QR code if you guys want to follow me or whatever. When you guys are done. Cool. Now the live demo. And yeah, this is great because I have more time to actually explain it. When I did this at the last conference, I had to rush through it. So if you guys have any questions or you want me to stop, let me know. We got 30 minutes for me to show you everything, which I couldn't really do with other conferences. So if you want, here, you can turn this one off. I'm going to talk really loud. So, to do this, we're using two things. So I showed you guys, oh no, it's good. I'm gonna have to switch it. It's because I don't have this on.
Okay, I was just raising the button because we had this last time, so I just lowered it a bit.
Cool. Yeah, so we use DeepFace Lab for creating the models, right? So they're DeepFake Face Lab models. For them in real time, we're using what's called DeepFace Live, in which you can select that DeepFace Lab DFM model and then infer them. So we're doing the inferring of the video model using something called DeepFace Live. And let's fire that up. And one thing I learned is that lighting is really important. Without proper lighting, the models break, as you can see right now. Give it a moment. Let me just have it working. There we go. Calibrate. Yeah, lighting is very tricky. Usually I do these in a very controlled studio environment when we're doing these types of things. I have a green screen, professional lighting, and yeah. But we're going to do the best we can. So now we have the video model loaded. Let me do this. I think it's the zoom. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So I'll just stand still like this. Okay, so we have, whatever, I'll just get to it in a sec. So we have DeepFace Live set up as the input. And then next, we're going to use something called voice changer. Voice changer is where we load and select so to use it, you're going to upload the model, so the path file, and then the index file that's spit out from the RVC trainer. Once you have those in here,
I'm going to see if I can cut off these lines maybe, though. You think that might help?
It's fine for now. I mean, I just had to not move my head. Yeah, so to use it, it's really straightforward. You can fire this up in a Docker container that has GPU compute allocated to it. Oh yeah, all this stuff is very dependent on CUDA. So you can only do this on an NVIDIA graphics cards. So on this case, I'm using, I bought this laptop specifically for these demos. It has a 4090 with, I believe it has 12 gigabytes of VRAM, which is sufficient for doing this stuff locally. But for training, I do recommend doing the training of this stuff in the cloud. For video models, I recommend training off Lambda Lab, not like pitching vendors, but Lambda Labs, you can rent A100s for $1.29 an hour. And to do a video model, you need roughly 4 days of training, so $100, right? To create a nice quality video model like you see here, minus the lighting getting a little weird. So yeah, so we're gonna take DeepFake Live and voice changer, we're gonna infer them both at the same time. I have on here a 1 second chunk. So what it's doing is it's gonna take my audio buffer and break it into 1 second chunks and infer them. Because if you provide it too little, it can't predict much off of it, or it's not as accurate. But I found that a 1 second chunk is sufficient for it to take that and infer it and then translate, or not translate, but run the voice changing to my friend to change it into his voice. Let me just set the buffer size over here. So in a moment, let me set microphone, headphones. Okay, so I'm gonna turn this on now. So I'm gonna show you Chris. So my friend Chris, I'm gonna bring him up on stage. He has long hair, I do not. So we're gonna need a little help. It gets better, trust me. This is only, I have another one I'm gonna show you. Babe, how's my hairline? So Chris is a big fan of the Miami Dolphins, and he's got long hair. So I'm also like 30 pounds heavier than Chris, so I have a chubbier face. Here we go. Testing 1, 2, 3. Oh, there we go. Hey, don't put it too loud, otherwise there's enough feedback into like an echo loop. Good afternoon, Hackmiami.
Good afternoon, Hackmiami.
I'm really excited to be here today to demonstrate how hackers can take public information about you, your CEO, your chief financial officer, or any public figure for that matter, and use that data to train custom voice and video models and infer them in real time. Cool. So yeah, that was the live demo part of showing the real-time aspect of it. It's not perfect because usually I do these in like a very controlled studio environment. Here I'm going to get feedback coming from there, coming back from here. If I'm doing this for a red team, I have an earpiece, so like I can hear the audio, but it's not actually playing in this loop. So that's the first. So this is the model of my friend Chris. So I'm going to show you something else. So all this started in February. After the whole Hong Kong deepfake stuff, my company was like, hey, Brandon, do you want to learn AI? I'm like, of course. Can you guys buy me some graphics cards? So they did. So then I said, who on my team, because again, you got to consider the ethical considerations of what we're doing. I'm not just going to clone anyone. I had to ask for permission. So no one on my team, said they would allow me to, except for one person. So I'm going to introduce you to someone named Elite. Someone I work with. Some of you may be familiar with her, Elite Dennis. She won the DEF CON Black Badge for the Social Engineering Challenge a few years back. She's very well known in the cybersecurity space for social engineering. There's a ton of videos on her on the internet, YouTube videos, podcasts, webcasts. She's everywhere, right? And she actually gave me permission to clone her. She said, let's use that as a proof of concept, right? So what I'm going to show you is a model that was trained only on public information. She didn't offer me any sort of assistance. She didn't, I didn't go over her house and shoot the video like we did with my buddy Chris. So we created this model back in, this is where all the research started, and to basically test this hypothesis. Can this work? And it turns out it can. But unfortunately, I was going to actually present this at GISEC in Dubai a month ago when I was in Dubai, until I learned about their cross-dressing laws. And I realized it's probably not a good idea for me to impersonate a woman in front of 20,000 people on stage in the Middle East and go to jail. So 2 weeks before I was supposed to leave for Dubai, I called my buddy Chris and he goes, let me guess, you want to clone me? I'm like, actually, yeah. So I'm going to show you the elite version that no one's seen yet. Oh, give me 1 sec. So this one, I need to calibrate it a little bit more, but let me, hold on. So you get the best results with cloning and the deepfakes when the source and destination closely match, right? So if I'm doing a deepfake of a woman, men don't have the same facial structure as women. So there's different considerations you want to keep in mind. When you're doing these deepfakes, yeah, you get the best results when the source and destination match in terms of gender, skin tone, facial structure, hairstyle, right? So you're going to kind of see that here. It takes a little bit of calibration, but we'll get it right. I think this has to go back to, so I'm going to have to align this a little bit. Just give me a moment. So we're going to load up the model of a leaf. Alright, give me a sec. This one is a little bit more trickier to calibrate. Oh, hey. Okay, give me a sec. This one is going to be a little bit trickier with the lighting. Oh, you missed the other one. This one isn't as high resolution as the other one because, again, this was trained only on public. Wait before you take the photo. Let me get a calibrator first. Hold on, my face, I gotta move the face and align it. Give me a sec. Move it over. And then I'll swap over the voice changer in a moment. Let me change the version settings. Okay, whatever. The lighting here is a little bit off. It's throwing the model off. But you can kind of get the idea of what we're about to do. So what I'm going to do is fire up the voice changer.
Fire up the voice changer.
Hi, my name is Elite Dennis.
Hi, my name is Elite Dennis.
That's Elite, like a lethal weapon.
That's Elite, like a lethal weapon.
And I'm so excited to be here today in Miami.
I'm so excited to be here today in Miami.
So you can kind of see the difference between doing this with public data versus one shot, like in person with someone.
In person with someone.
And I swear, it looks a lot better and with better lighting. Like it's super crisp, clear, very smooth. Trying to do the best I can given the environment we're in. I need more light. Let me do this.
I need more light. Let me do this.
Oh yeah, the colors are a bit funky. See all the yellow?
See all the yellow?
Fix that. Hold on.
Fix that. Hold on.
Yeah, so typically we do these in very controlled studio environments.
We do these in very controlled studio environments.
And yes, I sound like a woman.
And yes, I sound like a woman.
Yeah, whatever. It's the best I can do with the lighting. Let me just try, I'm trying to change the color temperature.
I'm trying to change the color temperature.
Yeah, the lighting's a little bit weird. Whatever.
Yeah, the
That's what
lighting's a
we
little
do.
bit weird. Whatever.
So yeah, this started as a proof of concept to demonstrate how we could take public information, right? Let me align this a little bit better.
Right. Let me align this a little better.
5. Okay, now it's aligned. Now let me have a lower version of the face. And yeah, like I said, I think the lighting is the most important part. If you don't have proper lighting, the face isn't illuminated enough for the mapping to occur. So again, studio environment is the way to go. Green screen as well. So what we found, we could actually take this a step further. I didn't bring the green screen today, but essentially what you can do to really elevate the scene and make it more authentic. Let me turn off the voice changer. So one thing you do to elevate the scene and really make this more authentic is using a green screen, right? So what you can do is take this and map the output from this into OBS and create this like virtual environment. And then with the green screen, you can drop in a background. But that's a two-dimensional object, right? It's a person from the two-dimensional static image. So what you can do from there, for her specifically, Alif, she has in her background where she does all of her interviews, she always sits in the same office. But in her office, she has a drawer, a cabinet behind her, right? Where she has her rewards and all that good stuff. One thing you can do to really elevate the scene is if you use cardboard boxes and wrap it in that chroma key color green, right? So I take this object and I just wrap it in the green screen color. And essentially it's deleted from the scene and it's invisible. But the idea here is if it's behind me, I can then stack objects, real life objects behind me, like a cup, a bottle of water, whatever it is. So as I'm doing the DeepFake talking in this virtual environment, I can reach behind me on this shelf that's behind me, grab a drink and start drinking. And the end user who's seeing this is gonna think like, okay, this is actually a real person. It's not this two-dimensional like DeepFake being done. And it's being used also as a way to essentially defeat some of these identity verification processes. This is one of the things they're looking at. So yeah, using a green screen, cinematic elements, a wig, you can kind of create and be anyone you want to be in the world. So yeah, that's the demo of a leaf. But yeah, again, that was where it all started as a proof of concept, where we had this hypothesis. Can we clone someone based off public information? Turns out you can. And then you can take that now a step further if you're doing assessments with clients with their permission, obviously with their cooperation. You fly out there, shoot whatever you need to shoot, and then use those to create these super high quality deepfakes and then use them for running assessments. So yeah, that's all I had for me in terms of the talk and demo. I know I have some time. If you guys have questions, I can talk and answer questions.
So I have a question. In a typical security awareness thing, you give end users some tips about how to detect this sort of thing, right? So
Yes.
what kind of advice do you give in these cases?
For a real-time deepfake, tell me something that only Brandon would know, right? Think about it. Adding like a layer of 2FA when it comes to like sensitive or financial related transactions. If someone calls you, okay, hey, tell me what's the code word? What's the 2FA code off your whatever? That may cause too much friction in an organization by adding all those elements. So yeah, it's definitely a challenge right now. But in my opinion, I think the easiest solution, if you want to call it that, is if the two parties already have an agreed upon like code word that only they know. So if way to mitigate things like the real-time deepfakes. So it's essentially it's 2FA.
Or maybe having them touch their face or putting a grid that's going to be picked up by the camera.
Yeah, so if you see, so that's actually really interesting you said that. So when you start putting things in front of your face, it essentially breaks the model. I'll put on this one. So next here, and whatever, I'm not going to put the wig on, but. So when I put something in front of my face, you're going to see the model breaking. So if I go like this, like pick your nose, it breaks, right? So that is, as it stands, that is one way. However, what I was able to do, I mean, I still need more research into this. When I trained the models, I trained it to ignore hats. So technically, I could train the model, like watch, see how right now it's mapping up to here, right? Because it's whole face. When I put the hat on, it's not going to do the whole face. It's only doing the here. Because I trained the model to ignore hats. It understands the shape of what a hat looks like. So while yes, in the current state, if hold something in front of the face would break the model, like right now. I could technically, during the training phase, take pictures of me going like this or putting my hands in front of my face and train the model to ignore the hand but only capture and infer everything around it as a way to essentially get around that. But again, that requires more time and effort and research.
I was just going to say that one of the first things I noticed when you were talking, if there was the lady was your jewelry to watch your hands or women's hands.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, especially when I do the model of a leaf, it's very apparent on days where I have like a little beard coming out. But again, a lot of these things, I mean, these are very minor things that I feel like can be solved with makeup, right? You put some foundation on to level out the skin tones, paint my nails, or whatever I gotta do.
Shave your forearms.
Shave my forearms, yes. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely challenges. That's why I said you get the best results when you get the same genders doing it, same facial structure. Yeah, go ahead. Why is this still breaking?
The public data that you use to train a model, how long it takes and how hard it is to prepare it for?
It really comes down to the quality of the data. For the one of a leaf, it took a solid week of preparing the data between the video and the voice. I would say a solid 3 days of, well, I mean, once you take the frames, you extract the frames, that's very quick. But the process of labeling the data, which here, I'll show you what that looks like. So let's say you're labeling the data. Let's see, data source. Okay, so let's edit this one. So this is, in my opinion, is probably the most important step when you're doing DeepFake video models, but it's also the most tedious. So what I'm about to show you. So yeah, DeepFake's lab is essentially a set of really fancy batch scripts on either Windows or Linux. Again, requires CUDA, NVIDIA, and all that good stuff. It's very weird about the dependency issues, so just keep that in mind. So this is the labeling step, right? In this one, I labeled 96 images. Let me go to what one looks like. So here, you can kind of see how, well, this is actually one that I learned off of it. How do I get to the one where it skips ahead? Skip non-mask control. Okay, so here's one that I actually labeled. So here, as you see, I labeled and told it to exclude the hat, so it recognizes the shape of the hat, but then also only recognize, the face when he's wearing hats. And then if I keep going on Control Shift, see here the side profile, no hats, etc. So this is, in my opinion, the most important step, but also the one that takes the longest to do, just because you have to go through these frames, do a variety of angles, expressions, lighting conditions. Here we don't have to deal with that because we have a green screen, we can change it to whatever we want. And also in the studio, we were able to adjust the lights, like bright, not bright, etc.
You mentioned you got public information on Leaf, so how did you get that type of information? What kind of background was she in to be able to get that good of
So, I mean, she was just like sitting in front of her office, just talking to a camera. She does a lot of, for our company, she does a lot of webcasts. So I made the proof of point. I was like, wow, someone could probably train a model off of all the webcasts you're doing. Turns out you can, because I took only 2 of those and used that footage as the training data. But yeah, it's this is probably the most tedious, but also the most important process. Like, I wouldn't just like do 10 and call it a day. Like, go through this, like spend a few hours each day for a couple of days. Like, just don't give up, because the final product will all come down to the quality of the input. Not just the quality of the input, but how good you also label that data too. Because if you can have great data, but if you're not labeling it correctly, right, then when it's doing training, it's learning the wrong things. And if it's learning the wrong things, when you infer it and you're providing it new stuff, it's going to give you the wrong results and the wrong predictions. So there's kind of a trade-off between the two.
When you're labeling it, you're labeling by hand, basically, so you're
Yeah, well, for video models, yes.
right. So you're basically drawing out the shape of the face.
Yeah, so you're defining those contours. And yeah, that's what the process of labeling looks like for video models. If you're labeling, I don't know, some sort of classification model, that could look that process may look different. It may be an Excel grid that shows file1.jpg, and then you may have different columns that show different attributes. Cat, yes. Dog, no. Ocean in background, yes. I don't know.
Do you think eventually AI will be good enough that you can just say, ignore the hat in every frame and just say,
Oh, I mean, eventually, yeah. Because, I mean, generative AI can understand things, and you can, but for now, it just requires you to manually, do it.
Did you show the E1 Spice? That was my favorite.
Oh, no, I haven't. Here, I'll show you some really cool ones. Wait, let me pick someone from the audience that will work for this. You, sir, come up here, in the red shirt.
Okay.
Yes. I got one for you.
Oh, I know exactly what you're going to pick.
Keanu Reeves.
Yep.
So.
What is the nickname for him in there?
Oh, I don't know.
Something weird.
Something weird. All right, so you are going to be. To load. So DeepFake Lab comes with some cool models. So for example, here's me as Mr. Bean. But we have one that's going to look a little bit better. Here, stand in front of the camera, just steer straight.
Yeah. At the camera?
Yeah. The facial hair may or may break it, but we'll see. Ready?
Oh, why? I'll take it.
I wish I could remember a quote right now.
Right? You can do like the. Wait, that's actually why I bought the this wig, just so I could be kind of Reeves. And yeah, it was actually quite entertaining when I tried to buy this through the company and explain to accounting why I wanted to buy a bunch of wigs. So yeah, you can kind of be anyone in life. As they say, when you're little, when you grow up, you can be anyone you want to be. With deepfakes, you actually can now.
That software is open source?
Everything I showed you is open source, and that's the crazy part. And this, it's not new. DeepFake Lab has been out for I think 4 or 5 years, since 2020, I believe. So yeah, it's nothing new. It's just a matter of just wiring a bunch of components together.
So the data that you put together for your friend Chris and the data that you put together for Elite, the data that you put together for Elite, did you clean that up using, say, Audacity, or did you use Premiere Pro, or?
So for Elite specifically, I use Audacity.
Okay.
Until I realized I could do it all in Adobe Audition. Because yeah, that took me hours and hours and hours to do. But yeah, once I realized how can I do this in batch, I read that I could do it in Adobe Audition. I gave it a try, and yeah, it took 5 minutes. So yeah, I'm all about time cost saving, especially when we're not cheap. So I'm trying to save money and save my money.
Yeah.
So what took me probably 20 hours, now takes 5 minutes, which is a huge time cost savings. Anyone else? I saw people in the back.
Yeah, the voice works.
For Connor Reeves, I don't. Yeah, this one I didn't create myself, so I don't have the voice for it. But I'm sure there's one out there on the internet. And here, let's do another volunteer. I need a female. So a female. Oh no, actually, you'd be perfect. You're perfect for this one.
Can you make me like a supermodel?
Yes.
I don't have any makeup on.
Today's your 21st birthday.
There's 2 ladies right there. We're not blonde.
Oh yeah, hair color doesn't matter. But yeah, if a female would like to come up here and give it a spin, I'll show you an example. We're very inclusive here. Erica, come up here.
David, looks good on you.
So, everyone, say hi to Erica.
Hi, Erica. Hello.
I'm there.
So look at the camera. Don't look here, just look straight. So yeah, this is another model of Amber Heard. Again, just public, open. And yeah, as you can see, it works. You get best results when it's female to female, right? When I do it, it looks a little funny. All right, here's actually a. Stay right there. Stay back. Come back. So yeah, that's CyberMirage.
That's awesome.